Get the microphone, please.
Lesson one.
Lesson one, how to use the microphone.
Uh-huh.
Release. Good deal. Seth Reeser, my wife and I just moved to the area in February, but I've been a part of Radnor for 7 years now. My wife has grown up here. I'm a local business owner, technology and finance, and happy to be aboard.
Okay, super. Great to have you. Okay, and then along these lines, hello, welcome, Lisa. We also have another resignation. This is from Joe Garzia, and I think many of you saw his note today. So I think, again, similar to Jeff, it's for all good reasons. He's got two boys that are 10. He's got two boys that are 10 and 12. He's leader of their scout pack. He basically has two jobs, so it's all for good reasons, and he's definitely vested in our community. And I think what's nice is he was only with us for a short time, but he already had an impact. Because without Joe, we would have never gotten all those trees at St. Catherine's, which has a nice corner property, a great visibility. We can even use that for advertising in the fall, and I know Joe will continue to be a liaison for us. So I just want to thank him, even though I know he will not have time to watch this, but we will thank him. Okay, so with that also, I will mention along those lines that we will be able to post for another position, and just to let you know that the Radnor Conservancy has reached out to me, and they'd be happy to put a member on our board. We know officially they would have to go through the interview process at the BOC, but just want to mention that. Okay. Okay. So proceeding to the meeting minutes, number 3 then. The June meeting minutes, any comments to those?
Just one, and Trish can update you on this. The Conestoga Road project that we reviewed last month, they did take all the trees. So Trish has sent correspondence to them following up on what they need to do to recompense Shade Tree Commissioner Radnor for those trees. I believe it was 6 replacements or a $1,500 fine, but Trish can fill you in.
So that is correct. But the meeting minutes show that the recommendation was to either save the tree or to replace it, if they were going to take it down, to replace it with 6 trees. And that is in the meeting minutes. But they did call me just the other day and said that they are going to take that tree down, and that they wanted a list of trees. What is a large tree? What is a small tree? So I did send them an email back. I copied John Hosbach on it, and they are going to do the 6 replacements.
And then the one thing is, Trish, 4 of them need to be large canopy.
That is correct, and we told them that.
Perfect. Mm-hmm. Perfect. Okay, good. Okay, new business. We only have one property to look at.
Can we approve?
Oh, sorry. Excuse me. All in favor of approving the meeting minutes? Aye. Great, thank you. New business, we have one property, 515 Brookside. Matt, do you want to share your comments with that?
And they're not here, so.
Yeah.
I don't, yeah, so what we have in front of us, what is just a site plan. It doesn't show what they intend to do with the new addition, the small addition and the pathways. So I did send that around, though. The architect had, actually Dave Fiorello had a copy of what the architect plans to do, and Dave forwarded that to me. So I expected the architect to be here tonight to present, but they're not here. So I think we table it.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough.
And I did just speak to them around 3 o'clock this afternoon and told them that he did have to come, or the resident somebody needed to be present. So they did know.
Okay, super. Thanks, Trish. Thanks, Matt. Okay, so now we move down to the 2019 goals. Okay, so this is where we have the goals set for 2019. We'll cover the items in bold. First one up being implement the master street tree charter. And one moment. I pulled up the wrong file. Give me 1 second here. Sorry, apologies for that. July. Okay. So first order of business is to go over the spring planting. Okay, so basically reflecting back, what was the outcome of the spring tree planting? And then from there, we'll move into the two other topics. And John Hosbach has got our spring summary.
Yep. So 75 trees were planted this spring by All Seasons Landscaping out of Alden, Pennsylvania. The firm did a really good job planting through best management practices. Actually, I followed them a few days, making sure that those practices were being met, to the extent that I actually saw them going and putting little flyers in everybody's door. And I thought for a second maybe they were soliciting work. So after they pulled away, I went up to the door, knocked on the homeowner, spoke with them about the watering, and they said, yeah, we have a little brochure here. They actually put a little hanger on everybody's door, how to properly water your new tree, which was great. As of last week, one of my technicians did a full inspection of every tree that was planted this spring, and out of the 75, we only lost 2. One was at St. David's Church, and the other one, I don't remember the address. Those trees will be reviewed again probably mid-September, and all warranty work will be done in the month of October through All Seasons, since we have a full warranty program. So it went very well. People tend to be watering. Their investment is there, so it's been great so far.
And hey, John, do you have a count on how many are at residents versus how many in the parks?
I do not. I do have the count. I just don't have it with me tonight.
Yeah, I think right before the planting, we were almost 50-50.
No, it was more residents. I think it was like
Okay.
65% was at residents, actually.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, if you can get that would be great. And then do you know how many were small versus large?
Yes, 80% were large.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so any learnings from the spring tree planting?
If I could make a note, I think, and this is just logistics, we need to have that process sent out by the end of January, February, so that we give the contractors who will be bidding through Penn Bid Services ample time to source material. There was some substitutions, obviously, which I don't really like. However, the timing of that project and the way it played out, we had to do some substitutions. So I suggest going forward that we have this all wrapped up by mid-February. Bid packages go out or labeled on Penn Services by the end of February, so that March and April they can start planning.
And then from my standpoint, I talked to a few of the residents that got the trees. They were really happy with the trees that they got. The only glitch I heard was that they didn't get to select the location. So in the fall planting, usually there's a stake given and they can determine where along the street the tree goes. And in this case, it was more so a surprise. So I think that's probably something we could improve upon. Yeah. Any other feedback? Okay, sounds good. Lisa?
Can I just ask a question?
Yeah.
So I know it's, and I apologize for my ignorance on this, so it's street trees, so you ask for people. Have you ever considered, in the township, we have a lot of people who have concerns around the stream banks eroding and things like that. Have you ever considered, and I don't know if this is a best practice, planting trees allowing people to plant them along stream banks?
So at Enki Park, part of this program, we removed a bunch of pines right along the creek corridor, which was the wrong plant for a riparian buffer, and we actually put in shade trees all along the corridor. I think we planted 30 of them there along the creek. So yes, that is a big concern, and we do manage that.
So if people got the trees, would they be able to ask that they be planted on their property along stream banks?
I think the intent, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chairman, we wanted the trees as a streetscape, correct?
Yeah, the idea was to maximize the benefit to the community. So if they were on the streets and in the areas that were bare, that was the priority. But certainly the same way that we had extra trees this time and we put them in the parks, we could take extra trees and put them along the banks. And I assume, Lisa, you're mentioning that to help out with stormwater management. Is that the reason?
So I have some residents, specifically over my ward, who live along the Darby Creek, and as the creek, erodes the banks. So people have asked if that was possible, and I said I would bring it up, I would ask. I was coming to the meeting tonight, so.
Yeah, I think it is.
I think we should consider putting that in our notes to ask for, to get passed. Especially, it would be appreciated by all residents because it would help with stormwater management and erosion. Because
Lisa,
I
would
have
you
I have a
like that meeting
client who lives on Gulf Creek, and her bank is eroding, and she would appreciate.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything really to pass. I think it's up to us, if it's considered right-of-way, just the same way when we had
It's not
leftover trees.
right away, though. So it's these
Oh.
creeks that come on, it's private property.
Oh, I
That's what
see.
Lisa's talking about.
Oh, okay.
So that, it would be a,
I think that would be okay. I don't see any reason why not. Does anyone else?
because it's not in the township right away.
No, but nor, the trees that we plant in the front of people's yards, that isn't the right-of-way either, most cases.
No, I think it is. It's
No,
on
it
the
isn't,
street.
because I know along St. David's Avenue, there is no right-of-way that is in lawns, and yet trees are planted on both sides there. So,
We need, Steve, does it, I mean, isn't it like 12 feet from the center of the road?
no, it varies by every road.
Oh.
So in some roads, they may only have a foot. Some roads have none, some roads may have 12 feet. So it really varies, and that's where the street trees are along the street to the benefit of the community and the neighbors, but aren't necessarily in the township right-of-way.
Then who is taking care of those trees?
The residents are.
Residents.
Yeah, that's why they pay $35.
That's why they paid for the
Mhm.
35.
Yeah, yeah, and they agree to that up front.
I mean, as we do the survey work, the best practice is actually getting the tree further into the yard, not hanging it on the edge. Number one, for the health of the tree, because of the compaction and other issues with road being busy. The other thing is anywhere around wires. You don't want to plant an inappropriate tree, which are large trees, sometimes in where they're going to be in 10 years, going to be a problem. So, and that's actually, from what I've talked to other former shade tree commissioners, sometimes it's a bit of a challenge to get people to set the tree back a little bit for whatever reason. But, that's something that comes into play, I think.
And doesn't the fall planting that the Conservancy do allow the residents to plant the trees where they want on their property, right? So there is an
No.
opportunity.
No.
No?
So the fall planting was started by the Conservancy, but is run by the township. And Kimberly Dunn just happens to be the person that coordinates it. But it is similar to the spring planting, except for they're all large trees, not small trees, and they're all done along the street.
Oh, there are.
Yeah, so the same
Okay.
type of thing. What you may be thinking of, Ginny, is the Conservancy runs a very large spring planting in which they give away trees.
That's what I'm
Not
thinking.
planting, but they give away trees. They're smaller trees, and residents can plant them wherever they like in their yard.
That's what I'm thinking of,
Yeah.
thanks.
And they run at the same time as our spring planting, so that
Okay.
may be what you're thinking of. Okay.
I mean, that might be a little bit of feedback I would give in that I thought it was confusing that we were doing our planning on top of the Conservancies. Maybe, but, I mean, that is the ideal time to plant, so
Mhm.
I'm not sure how we get around that.
And just being new, the first place I went to learn more about the plantings of trees was the website. I noticed we have some material there. Maybe it's worth revisiting that language just to be a little bit more loose with how we describe where the trees go and how you can get them.
Mhm.
Just so people don't think that they're restricted as to, I can only get one tree 10 feet away from right of way.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, no, yeah, that's a good point, Seth, because that shouldn't be the case.
right.
Yeah. Okay. But that, Lisa and Claire, what you just mentioned about planting along the creek or areas where they want stormwater management, do the residents know that Radnor Conservancy has a very large spring tree giveaway, and they could obtain some of those plants, those trees, and plant them there? Well, I'm asking you two, because you raised it from your residents. Are they aware of the Radnor Conservancy planting, or tree giveaway, I should call it?
So the residents, they are aware. I
Okay.
think some of them are elderly, so for them to plant them, but,
Yeah.
the idea, somebody had actually come to me and said, hey, would the Shade Tree Commission do a project on my yard? And I'm like, well, nah, I don't think they would do that, but I can ask about, the street tree program, and if that's something, because then there can be assistance with the planting, which I think is always, a concern for a lot of people. But yeah, they are aware. I think they've actually gotten trees from the Conservancy before.
Here, Laura,
Okay.
new program for you.
Sure.
Hi, Seth. Laura Luker from the Radnor Conservancy. Hi, you guys. Happy summer. Hi. Quickly, just on this subject, in terms of the programs. I'm glad to hear getting the spring program earlier in the season. It really, I know that was a trick. Really important to have the trees be located prior to, with approval of the resident, because I have two neighbors that were like, one's right next to a tree that was just planted 2 years ago, even though it's a smaller tree, and they thought that it was probably cute to cluster it. It wasn't really what they wanted, but
Real quick, Laura, just on that note, we did get, I probably got 4 or 5 phone calls a day from the contractor. There was a ton of utility conflicts.
I'm sure there
Ton,
was,
and a lot of
which-
trees, I would say 70 to 80% of the trees were moved because of utilities.
which is why you
Yep.
want to start this program earlier.
Yep, correct.
Also, we'll need to have really good language about the differences between the giveaway and the spring planting. Thirdly, or whatever, I know some of those trees did go, even though they're small-ish, they were under wires. We saw a few of them under wires, and it's just not, even though I know we kind of set it up to have small ones for under wires, I think we should eliminate that idea and just not even get near wires. The stormwater issue, don't get involved in that because of right-of-way issue. Maybe we have a conservancy stormwater. There are grants with PHS, with their Tree Vitalize, with the MS, meaning it's the stormwater, that maybe we can figure out and look into that if there's something, but that's a whole nother project. One last thing about the planting. Oh, so fall, coming up fall, it's kind of strange that the township is having two different, like the shade tree does spring and then Kimberly does fall. And maybe we should really try to streamline these so everything is a little bit more cleaner on your ends or I should say Leah's end as well. So
Yeah.
something to think about.
Yep, and we're
Okay.
coming to the fall planting.
Okay.
So we're almost there.
Great.
Okay, good.
Madam Chair, real quick, I just wanted to give you those counts you requested.
Yeah.
So we had a total of 47% shade, 28% flower. We had 53 of the trees going residential, and 22 went into parks.
Okay. Great, thank you. Okay. Okay, so next item on the agenda, all along the Master Street tree planting, is that Cabrini has donated 88 trees to us. So, John, do you want to give us the background on why Cabrini is donating these trees, where they are? And then from there, we can discuss next
Yep.
steps of what to do with them.
That is correct. So Caprini College, obviously, they have a large enhancement program going on with new parking, I suppose new dorms. So in part of their planning and following chapter, our ordinance, they could not plant the trees where they should have been located just because of the dense woodland structure that they have that back up to these buildings. So they donated I think it's 88 trees to the township. Mr. Harry Hopnanian from Mayfield Gardens was nice enough to bring them to his yard and manage and water them. And they are going to be planted throughout different parks, areas where they're deficient, areas where we lost large trees. Those locations I do not have. Steve McNeilis has those areas, but they are all going to be utilized. Yep.
And then, John, just a question. Because I don't remember seeing Cabrini come through here. If so I just don't recall. But, so is the 88 per the ordinance, that they're using the calculation per the ordinance, and therefore they have removed X number of trees, and that's how they got to the number of 88?
Actually, there were some mistakes in their calculations, and they're overplanting what is actually required. So by my calculations, they only needed to plant 40 trees, and they're actually donating 88 trees to us. So I'm not sure where that came from. I'm sure that, obviously, Cabrini is well-versed in urban forestry with Howard Holden being there for so many years. So they were doing a great job of mitigation. But again, they're really, minimizing any impact on larger trees. So it's one of those things that they're going to keep some trees that they were going to originally condemn. So it could be a little bit of both.
Okay. And do we know why this didn't come before the Shade Tree Committee? Or did it? Oh, okay,
It came
sorry.
for planning and shade
Okay.
tree. It's about a year old, or maybe more than a year old, actually.
It's about 2 years old.
Okay,
Yep.
okay. And how did the decision come about to plant them in the parks, and which parks are they going in?
Again, yes, Steve McNeils has the list. The reason why we're putting them in the parks, we're putting them in areas where we've lost large structured trees, either through storms or abiotic or biotic issues. So we're trying to maximize and restore and bring those parks back to parity. Obviously, their parks in the last 2 years have been heavily used, so that's why we're trying to mitigate.
Plus, you're going to lose a lot more trees in the parks, within the next year anyway.
That's
All
correct.
the ashes are going.
And that was one of the big concerns, correct?
Okay. Any questions about the 88 trees from Cabrini? Okay, true. Okay, next item, fall planting. Okay, so believe it or not, it's like right around the corner. Okay, so in previous years, the way we've done the fall planting is, just to ground everybody, by memory, we've given away about 36 to 40 trees. It looks very similar to the spring tree planting in that each tree is purchased from a nursery. The nursery does the planting. A resident typically has a say in the location. They are all typically large shade trees, no small trees. So that's the difference between the two plantings. The other big difference is that the dollar cap was typically $25,000 to avoid a competitive bid. So the options we have on the table are we have money in our budget. We could spend more and do a competitive bid just like we did the spring planting. We could do all large trees, or we could do a mix of large and small. I think those are the two big levers we can pull. If you guys can think of other levers, let me know, but those are kind of the things we need to decide upon. Okay. So any feedback?
Well, I'd like to offering shade and flowering. I mean, if I remember, John, you said they were roughly evenly split between what people selected, so it does show that there is a lot of interest in having the flowering tree option.
Okay, others?
I'd go with what they did in the past with the 25,000 cap or something, to keep it.
Why would you do that?
I think it'll be easier, and you'll have more success rate. We've lost 2 of the other trees, John, from the spring. And the next, you're looking at them in September again,
October.
so we'd have to be done anyway, so.
How much?
How many do we usually get with the 25,000 cap? You know?
36.
How many?
Last year was about
36.
35, 36 trees.
Yeah, it's about $650 a tree, and smaller flowering trees would be a little bit less money.
How much money do we have in the budget that we could potentially allocate towards this?
That I'd have to look at. Our budget is about, by memory, about $100,000. And then we also have 20 trees that are being donated by Radnor Conservancy this year.
Oh, right.
And the other thing is, when we put forth our budget last year and asked for funds, we made an aggressive goal to plant, a high number of trees, much more than what we have previously. So I think we also have to keep in mind, if we don't plant it, then we don't make good on our promise in a way. So For
Yeah,
me,
for
the competitive,
10,000 more,
the
we get
competitive bid
twice as
doesn't
much.
bother me.
Yeah.
Yeah, only because it worked out pretty well this time, I would say, with the spring tree planting, and, we ended up going with all seasons. So just long we can write the bid or the RFQ.
Do we still have
With enough
time, do
clarity.
you think, John?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's good then.
Just one note on that, though. Logistically, what we've done in the past with Kimberly is we would go out and we put the flag where we feel it's the desired location, obviously sight lines, potential impact with infrastructure, utilities. Then what would happen is the contractor has to do what's called the PA1 call, and then a utility would come up and they would have to move the tree, and then the homeowner doesn't like that location or doesn't even like the location that we put the flag. What I would like to have happen, and I've been saying it all along, is Public Works can drop off, whoever signs up for a tree, can drop off a flag and put it in their mailbox. And then they have so many days to put the flag and photograph it and send an email with the picture to us so that we can verify it. So that way, when the contractor comes back, does his PA1 call, he's going to say yay or nay on the location, and then we can inform the resident saying, hey, no, we need to move it to the left 10 feet or to the right, depending on the utilities.
Yeah,
I want to give them the option.
No, yeah, that's the way I've seen it work before, actually, on my street, is where you get a stake in your mailbox, you put the stake where you want to, and then afterwards, Public Works comes along and either says, yep, that's great, or no, there's a wire or an underground problem, and the stake is moved.
It hasn't happened with this program in at least 6 years, because, I mean, I've been involved in putting the stakes out for 6 years. I don't know, did somebody put a stake last year at your property?
No, in my mailbox. It's happened with myself and my neighbors along St. David's Ave. And then the neighbor picks where they want the location, and then it gets adjusted.
That was for the fall planting?
Mm-hmm, yep. Yeah. Tree showed up, it worked out. So, but in either case, either way, John, I think we're saying the same thing. So I think that's all good. So I think what we have to do is just select how many trees we want to plant, and I think for that, we need the budget information.
So what's the downside to maxing out our ask? Like, what's a negative about saying we don't want to do the 25,000, we want to do 35, 40?
Absolutely we can, as long as we have it in the
I mean,
budget. You don't
I
have
don't-
to copy the
why
Well, I
budget.
don't
don't think there is any.
I mean, I don't think we should even discuss it. I think we should spend the money.
I agree with spending the money, it's just how much. That's the part I have to figure out. And then tacking on the 20 trees on top of that.
I mean, I just don't think carrying surplus in the shade tree fund helps anybody.
I was going to say the same thing. I don't know why we would strive to have a surplus at the end of the year.
I like the idea of having it go out to bid, because maybe we'll get more bang for our buck if it's competitive.
Yeah, and that's how it worked for the spring planting, and that worked out pretty well. Okay, so then why don't I take the action offline? I'll see what would be the max that we could spend, and then I'll add on the 20 from the Conservancy, and then that could be our target number that we would go out to bid on. And then, of course, the BOC would have to approve those funds.
Right, but then the next step would be really having maybe a little subcommittee of this group actually put together the bid, so that we're not, so we don't get behind the 8 ball with time.
Well, I think the bid's going to look the same as the spring tree planting largely, but the quantity would be changed, and we could put some of our first choices there.
But how's that going to work with Laura? Are you doing a monetary donation or the actual trees? Okay.
What about Chanticleer? Are we getting trees this year from Chanticleer?
They don't give trees, they give typically a donation, and it's in the neighborhood of 15 to 20,000. So I just would need to be able to pull up the budget to see if that line item is in there. Let me see if I can do that. Or I can check on that offline and then just add that in as well. But that was,
Yeah, I thought
that
we
is
had allocated
expected.
that.
Let me see. Okay. Okay, so I'm just opening up the board-approved budget. Let's see. Whoa. What's lovely about it is it sits sideways. Let's see, try this again.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
We have Brookside Road here. Do we want to pull him in real quick so that then we can continue our?
Yep, we can as soon as we're done with this topic.
Sure,
Because
perfect.
we're almost done with this
Perfect.
agenda item. 1 second.
you want to sit here all night.
Okay. Let's see. Mm. It, it looks like 15,000 is donated this year as a donation marked under grants and gifts, so I would assume that's from Chanticleer. So just to give you an example, and that's pretty even with what they've donated in prior years, 18,000, 20,000. Yep. So I think what I'll do offline is looking at the budget and looking what we've spent for the spring tree planting, subtract that, see how much is left, divide that by basically 650, which is about the price per tree, and that's even a little bit heavy because the flowering trees would be less than that, and then add on 20, and that would be basically our max. And then we can always look at that, and like we did with the spring planting, we put in 2 bids, 35 and 70, two RFQs. Give us an RFQ for 35 and 70, and then we award it 70. So does that sound okay? And I'll send out an email with the follow-up. Okay.
While we're on the topic,
Yeah.
do we have any thoughts or policies on using nurseries from Radnor Township as opposed to outside townships?
Using our what? Sorry, Seth?
Nurseries from within Radnor Township versus others?
John, I'll let you speak to that.
So most times on larger projects, we go through a service called pen bid because it's over a certain amount. Unfortunately, it's a low bid process, and they're going to go and obviously we can always reject the tree once it comes on, and we have done that in the past. But most of the times, they're going to a wholesale yard, and the only closest wholesale yard to here would be Sam Brown's, and that's the closest in Malvern. Yep.
And along those lines, John, do you recall the total for the spring planting in dollars?
I believe it was around 80K, I believe. I could be incorrect. I have to check that out.
I can check prior
Yep,
meeting
yep.
minutes. Okay, sounds good. Okay, now, Brookside Drive, please.
Well, first of all, let me apologize for my tardiness. For some reason, I had 7 in my mind, even though the agenda is in front of me and said 6:30.
We are flexible and we're here,
Well,
so
thank
no
you for
problem.
that. So, do you have any questions of me, or would you like me to just tell you what's going on? Or?
Yeah, if you can just introduce yourself, tell us just a brief overview of the project itself.
Okay.
The number of trees being removed, trees being replaced, and then tree protection fencing for any of those existing trees that are going to be close to the egress path.
Okay. So the project's at 515 Brookside Avenue. It's a 1908 house. I guess initially it was kind of a summer house.
Can you please speak into the mic, please?
Yes. Initially, it was a summer house. My clients bought this last August, and they're looking to do minor modifications, which include an addition of about 210 square feet, which is basically a mudroom. Okay, so if you, this is a survey that was prepared by Momini, and then which located contours, trees, floodplain, all the critical parts of the project. This is now kind of one of my drawings, which took the surveyor's information and kind of took it from engineer to architect. So I've transferred all the trees on the property onto this, this drawing. Here you see the house. This is Brookside Avenue. Here's Ithing Creek. The house has a little notch in it here, and we're basically looking, if you see the dashed line, to create an addition here, which would be an enclosed, heated addition. And then here, we're looking to extend a porch, which basically right now exists here. You exit from the kitchen of the house down to this terrace. We're just looking to extend those two. So we are not removing any trees. Certainly that's our intention. We don't want to move, I mean, those of you familiar with the property, it's quite a beautiful house and property. So kind of maintaining the integrity of all that is a goal. Addition to that, we are looking to remove this rear terrace. It's a wood deck, and in essence, put in a raised terrace. And this kind of oddly shaped snake-like object is what I'm referring to as a ha-ha wall. So it will basically retain earth so that when you step out of the house, you step on about 6-7 inches down onto this terrace / level grass. It'll slope away from the house at about 1/4 of an inch per foot and run into this ha-ha wall. And the ha-ha wall will be of boulders, hopefully reminiscent of the house, larger. And the intent would be to avoid having a railing. So this will, instead of a hard drop, it will be sloped, planted, and actually the hard surfaces of that upper area won't actually approach the wall. So I did present, as part of the grading permit application, I noted, I guess, that there was 180 square yards being removed, and in actuality, there's only 60 square yards. And the hope is that the excavation for the addition, that earth will be moved and be used to fill in that area that we're referring to as a ha-ha wall. So on this plan, which has been submitted, and this portion approved by Laura Stone of Gannett Fleming, are marked for tree protection, anything that's close, as well as part of that submission, there were details, excuse me, for the protection of trees. So if you have any questions, I can answer them. I don't know. I just threw some other images together to help give context if it helps.
Mm-hmm. Can you just show us your egress pattern into the property, like with the construction vehicles?
Yes.
And if you can just point out the trees along the way?
It's going to come in. This is, again, I trust everybody's familiar with the property. It's kind of restrictive in the sense that the colonnade and pergola that goes along the road. So literally, there's only one place to go in.
Yeah.
Now, because this project going forward depends on a series of approvals, I've sort of proposed a generic tire scrub at the base of the driveway. But once we actually hopefully get the approval to move forward with this and a couple other things, as we consult with the contractor, because there are some tricky things that may push inward to the site. But basically, we would keep the road clean, which is the intention of that. So that's why I say approximate location, because we're going to put it in the best place, basically, is the intention. So as far as if you look closer, and I should say, I don't know if you guys have these drawings, but this drawing is hot off the press. Mm-hmm. And if I can submit that, Laura has seen these drawings, mm-hmm. and and I went ahead and kind of called out more trees for protection.
For those of you who don't know who Laura is, that's our outside engineer.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
Gannett Fleming. She's
Okay.
been very helpful
Okay.
on this and other things.
Okay, that's great. So if we go back to the drawing,
Yes.
if you can show us, when I say the egress pattern, so we understand you're using the existing driveway.
Yes.
And then you're probably coming around to both sides of the house.
Well, we're actually going to just try to come in through this side. One of the aspects of this property are, I'm going to outline walks for you right now. They're here, 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 all here, and coming up here. They're a very beautiful walkway. It's made up of broken pieces of stone and ceramic, and it's the kind of thing you want to protect. So unfortunately, we will have to affect a very small portion of this. This is how we will move around the site to get back here. And my hope is that that will be restored, but the hope is to disturb as little of it as possible. It's very restrictive here when it comes to trees, plantings, fences, walkways. So hopefully that's where we are. So to answer your question, we will move around through here.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if these drawings relate to you specifically, but these show that which is being taken away in terms of paths and structures and so forth. And this shows what is to be added. And that was done for the grading permits because there's lots of little pieces, hopefully trying to make it clear to Laura. I guess further, this is the location where the addition will be. So if you could imagine being able to pull this face forward so it's in line with this, so it's a single gable. So we're just filling in that quadrant. And then as well, we'd be extending this porch to give it kind of a balanced elevation and so forth.
Okay. Questions?
So when you're getting back to the areas where you're going to do construction, that's probably going to be with smaller equipment than,
Yeah, again, my interest, my client's interest, as well as your interest, is minimal disruption. So I've given thought, even for the percolation test, which we found, it's another issue. You know, I was there on site. There were very small, narrow passages to get through. Anyway, you know, it's in everybody's interest to act responsibly here.
yeah, because the tree protection looked fine to me on the survey, so.
Yeah, I mean, the key is, you know, we're going to be a little close, but the intent is, you know, the owner values all the trees, and certainly we're going to be looking to do whatever we can to protect them during construction.
Other questions?
I have a question about, what's the surface of the new patio?
You know, to tell you the truth, I don't know yet. A portion of it will be grass.
Because I thought you mentioned that impervious, so it looks
Yeah.
from your, the ha-ha wall looks like there's a space between.
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
exactly, and that's the idea. The ha-ha wall basically gives us a raised flat area, slight slope away from the house, and then just a portion of that will be hardscaped, and that's other issues with.
You haven't decided yet what that.
No, whether it's, I mean, I hope it's flagstone. Perhaps we could build off this paving that I've described to you. Unfortunately, I don't have a picture of it here. But, you know, I'm a passionate architect. I'm going to try to get them to do it as nice as they can. So.
Any other questions? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Great, thank you very much. Good luck with your
And
project.
Thank you. And again, I apologize for being late. And I
We're here.
appreciate that you,
Not a problem,
I would have been in trouble if you told me.
no problem. Okay, so working our way through the agenda, we're back on the goals. So we're going to number 2, which is keeping the ordinance current and more so implementing the bamboo ordinance. So, Matt, do you want to give us an update on how it went at the BOC?
It went fine at the BOC. Lisa and Rich, who come to our meetings, had some critique for what we had presented, and they offered some alternatives that I found very acceptable. We had a majority vote to implement the ordinance. It's passed muster, so it's in the books, as I say. So I think we're in good shape.
Okay, super. So is there anything left to do on the bamboo ordinance having it officially approved?
No.
Okay, great.
And education,
Yes.
education.
Yes.
To the
Resident
education end, I
education.
could
That
speak
goes to
that.
Jenny. Yeah, go right ahead.
I did work with Molly, our new, is it PR, is that her title? And she did put it on Facebook, she did put it on our website, and I did send to you folks, whenever you have a moment to review the language, I could draft up a flyer. I was going to ask Trish, I got this in the mail today, is this something that we can utilize for the bamboo notice to residents? I wasn't sure where the email or the mailing list came from for this. Is it?
I have no idea what it is.
Okay.
Let me show Lisa, maybe she knows what it is.
Yeah.
Good. I haven't checked my mailbox yet. Maybe it's there.
And one thought with that too, maybe we do a flyer educating on the plantings, spring and fall,
Yeah.
and then make the bamboo maybe not first and foremost item.
Yeah, and actually, that's a good point for the fall planting. I did want to talk about advertising that, and I missed that up above. So as soon as we finish this bamboo topic, we'll just go back there for a moment. Yeah, Laura. Yes.
On the bamboo ordinance, which is so exciting that it got passed. It's been a long, it was a push through in 2017, and here we are. It's great. Thanks for all your work, you guys. Interestingly, we'd like to kind of have an idea through Public Works of what bamboo the township has on their properties. And do they have a plan for mitigating this? So something to, as enforcement, but we should also be looking at township best practices as well.
And the ordinance covers that. The ordinance
Okay.
language covers the township's responsibility to
Okay.
control bamboo.
Yeah,
on
that's
its
great. And that flood flyer, which I got too today, I think is actually really because of it's a safety issue, and I think the township really felt a need to spend the money, which is very expensive to drop one of these. And so if they approved to do something like for planting, I would be really surprised. But since we do have Molly Gallagher, who has done, it's fantastic what she's putting out. I think we've got a lot of really good resources to be able to spread the word on many different topics.
Good. Thanks, Laura. So that brings us back to the fall planting and communication. And with the spring planting, Ginny did a great job of using the website and trying to drive traffic there. I was wondering, could we also use the trees that we've planted and perhaps put signs in front of them, almost like the way you see people advertising races in town, or different things they want you to sign up for? Could we have some type of posting that says, "Get a tree like this"? Just go to the website, something along those lines. And it could even be the trees that we planted, not just in the spring, but the trees that we've planted in the last couple of falls.
We could build a flyer around something like that. We had a multi-prong approach with the flyers in public places, the ad in the Suburban Times, and of course our Facebook and our website. And I've asked Molly if she knows of a email list. She was like practically the first day on her job, so
Oh, okay.
she was going to look into that for me. So hopefully maybe there is some sort of resident email list out there that we could also communicate through. But yeah, we could take that angle for the flyers and find I mean, I don't really know does anybody have a tree that was planted a couple of years ago, location that we could?
We have the locations of the trees planted over the last couple of years.
Okay.
So we could easily print up a sign, maybe even a sign that we could not only use this year, but also in future years as well. It wouldn't have to say 2019 on it, but it would just have to be the action that it drives traffic to the website or gets people to register, somehow to take some action. So.
Well, we'd have to get the residents' permission to put the sign in their yard,
That's true.
right?
That's true, almost like when, like a BOC member runs for office. So, yeah, we'd have to do that.
Okay.
But we could certainly talk to all of those folks that just received trees. We could easily put them in the parks where we just planted a bunch of trees.
Okay.
So, yeah, I would think so.
And maybe on the application, we have we can amend it to add a checkbox if they would be willing to allow a yard sign.
Yeah, great idea. We'll get their permission when they
Of-
sign up.
Of course, we wouldn't have to do all of the properties.
Yeah.
But at least do maybe 10 or 20, and then we can reuse them and pick
Yeah.
the high-traffic areas.
Yeah, exactly.
I think the parks are a great idea.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Is there someone overall that wants to head up the fall planting? Ginny's got the communication.
I mean, I would coordinate with Kimberly again. I mean, since I
Okay.
did that for spring.
Oh, that'd be great.
I mean, it is almost repetitive what we did in the spring.
Should be.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, Ginny, that's great, and I'm happy to help you.
Okay.
So just let me know, whether it's legwork or ideas, whatever you need.
Okay.
Okay,
Thanks.
super. Okay, great.
I can be a worker bee.
Okay,
And
sounds
many
good.
worker bees. You are the queen bee, Ginny. Okay.
Wonderful.
Okay. So then, if we go down, we do need someone, Joe had the leadership to update the ordinance this year. So obviously, he won't be doing that. And so I'd like to see, does anyone want to take on that responsibility? You can even think about it and come back next month. But basically, the ordinance is as of 2012. So it's refreshing it, maybe doing some benchmarking with other townships that we think are doing a really good job, maybe getting rid of some of the things that residents may consider a nuisance.
Eileen, can we add on to that scope of work? Some of the forms on our website are out of date, not up to snuff, don't have the Radnor Township logo on them. I keep meaning to try and get to that. I guess as part of communications, it could fall under my bailiwick, but I was thinking, if you're looking at the ordinance, because the ordinance directly relates to those forms,
Right.
it might make sense to try and coordinate all that effort.
Yep, no, that makes good sense. Okay, so
Eileen, would you like me to talk about, since we were still on planting, about the WBA project and where it is today?
Yep.
Or do you want to wait till a different time? I just didn't know, since we're talking about fall planting.
I do, and that is somewhere here that is coming on the agenda. We're almost there. We have a lot of goals to cover tonight. Okay, so we'll look for volunteers. You guys can think about it, and we'll look for somebody potentially next month. Okay. Okay, next up is it's a continuation of the topic that we talked about just last month with the Radnor Conservancy. So now we're getting to the topic of under number 3B, increase education and awareness to help keep and improve Radnor's tree canopy. So the potential options where we left this last month were the Radnor Conservancy proposed a certificate to be signed off by new home buyers at the time of closing. We, in parallel, were thinking of a similar approach to have a communication flyer that we would partner with realtors on, and the realtors would give it to new residents as, hey, did you know there's a shade tree committee? You could get a free tree. Oh, and by the way, there's an ordinance if you remove a tree. Some way to kind of lead with the carrot. So we just need to determine how do we want to go forward, because they're both very similar and good ideas. So any suggestions, preferences? I'll give you my preference then. My feeling is if we go with a certificate, that it will get buried in all the papers that these new home buyers are signing. And so therefore, they may not see it. So I do favor the same intent as the Conservancy recommended, but more so if we can partner with the realtors and they can give it out to new home buyers or even anyone that they run across to say, hey, look, did you know Radnor is a tree city? Did you know you can obtain a free tree? Did you know also there's an ordinance to protect it? Some way that it's more, a little bit more proactive. But I'm open to ideas.
My also thought was to try and do a certificate might get bogged down in procedural red tape and approvals and that kind of thing. But since we had this wonderful intern with us, maybe you could work on the flyer to give to the realtors and help us orchestrate just, I mean, I know Claire's in the real estate world. Help us get a flyer in the realtors' hands. What would you think of that?
Yeah, come on up.
All right, so I'm James. Nice to meet you. So I don't think it doesn't really matter to me like what form, as long as we're like kind of getting the message out, just to alert homeowners of the ordinance. So yeah, of course I'd be happy to help with however you want to go about that, but it doesn't have to be like you said, like a certificate form, because I know that it might be like a longer process, and like we said, it might not be as effective as something else.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd be happy to.
Yeah, that would be great.
I can speak to both things.
Yeah, go right ahead.
From a real estate point of view, a signed certificate would go along the lines of a certificate of occupancy, and which residents sign, sellers sign, that, you know, that the water doesn't go into sewers from, I mean, some pumps don't go into sewers, and that there's numbers on the houses, and that there's smoke detectors and things, which would have to be legally approved by the township to add that. So that would be a process. Not a bad idea, just a process. And there are many ordinances in Radnor Township, so I think it might almost be difficult, not to be a naysayer, to get an ordinance on that, because we have so many ordinances. However, I'm all about education. I know in my own office, I take our contractors, approved contractors, into the office and pin it up, and I also do send in the approved tree, because it's important that people know. So, and I think we could even formalize it a little bit and get you connected with managers of all the offices in Radnor Township. So what that would be an easy thing to do is to figure out how many offices are in Radnor Township and go to them, and I would be happy to be a liaison that any way I can, James, if that, and then put together a flyer and, you know, sort of get that information out is fantastic.
Let's make it easy. Just make it Claire is the only person that can sell real estate in Radnor, and you'll pass out the brochure. There you go.
A free tree with every house.
That would be a great budget item. Give away a free tree every time you buy a house.
Thanks for that, John.
And maybe 6 or 10 trees.
James, it's a fantastic idea, and it is so important that it's just, people don't know.
Yeah.
So I think that's what your goal is, correct?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it doesn't
so,
matter how
Did you
someone
get
is-
enough feedback from the shade tree on your flyer that you originally sent out? Did all of us give comments back to? I know I sent you some initial.
I know there was one or two, but I'm
Yeah.
not sure. But if we're not gonna go, there's no point.
But
Yeah,
no,
I think once you
that
draft
flyer
the flyer,
could
we
be.
could give feedback on that.
Yeah, I think that flyer could be
flyer.
tweaked a little bit for the realtors.
and let's brainstorm a little bit also as how to, you know, not get it buried on somebody's desk. So I think that's the point, is you want it to make an impression that it's valuable information, and how to get managers of these brokerages to commit to it.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I can't promise that, but I can certainly help with it.
I'm sold. So what I'm hearing is we want to go with option 2, a proactive flyer. We still want to target the same community, the real estate community, and that Claire and James will work together on this, both the flyer and then implementing it across the community.
My support would be, James, not necessarily with the flyer. I mean, I'm going to let that up to the Conservancy and how you really want that to look,
Just
but,
helping getting it out.
but I can help you connect with, happy to come and go through all the brokers and get you.
Sure, absolutely. We're all in this together.
Okay, so James, you'll be responsible for creating the flyer. We're happy to help. Ginny is our lead on communications, so we already have some existing artwork if you want to use that,
Okay.
and some contacts, but we'll let you take the lead. We'll do the final approval of it, just to make sure, yep, this
Yeah.
looks good.
And there's a meeting in August, right?
Yes.
It's a meeting every
Yep.
month. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, we won't hold you up. We'll figure out a way to get that done
Okay.
if it doesn't line up in the calendar. And then Claire will take the lead on getting it implemented throughout the Realtor community.
Okay.
Work with you to do that. So I'll actually come into the Conservancy office and help you
Okay.
through that, if that helps. And I actually have 2 interns myself, so maybe I'll have them work with you on that.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks, James. Thanks, Laura. Okay. Now, let's see. Just 2 quick action items. Trish, do you know if the Radnor Conservancy invasive plant poster was posted on our STC website?
I am not aware.
Okay. Can you follow up on that?
Sure.
Okay, so we'll leave that one open. The other one we had open was, Matt, giving Public Works a list of all the hazardous trees based on your tree survey. Have we found any way to do an export of that and provide that to Steve McNeilis?
No, all I've given Steve is a list of trees, hazardous trees in different areas of the township, not specific addresses. John and I, so we figure the survey work will be done by the fall, and John and I feel strongly that we really don't want to do the analysis until the survey work's finished.
So you want to give him one complete
I don't want to do
list
this,
in the
I
fall?
don't want to do a bunch of different analysis based on,
Yeah.
and Steve McNellis, when I talk to him, he's not begging me for this information. So, John, whatever you think, I mean, I'm open to, if you want a quick and dirty down analysis, the data's there, but when we've talked, we've thought it's better to have a complete survey, and we will have it done by the fall, so.
I personally think that's fine, because the whole idea was, if we can give Public Works a list of all the hazardous trees, then they can take them down, hopefully proactively before all the big winter storms happen. So that's the only harm. If we wait, it's just whatever storms occur in the interim, but
Well,
fall
so-
is right around the corner.
So the plan for hazardous trees and survey work is that we're going to finish the survey by September, or late September, I would assume.
Great.
The hazardous trees that we found, the extremely hazardous trees, we're going to revisit those. So that's, there's maybe 100 trees, or maybe a few more than 100. But since it's been a year, we're going to go back and take a look, because some of those trees are probably gone. So those are the 2 steps before the analysis.
Okay, super. No, I think that's fine. September's right around the corner, so I think that's great. Okay. Believe it or not, John, I think we're now on the WBA.
Great. So over the last 2 weeks, myself, Mr. Norsini, Carroll Engineering spent, I'd say, close to 25 hours in the WBA doing a tree inspection, looking at also concrete, curbing, sightline issues, tribulations that are impacting the WBA. We have found that there is a total of 46 trees being removed as part of the request from the BOC and the WBA. Out of the total of 60 tree plots, 14 of them are empty, and they are going to be mitigated and replaced with new trees, some new sidewalk issues that are going to be, we're trying to have some consistency on the site, so we have a lot of the tree pits have bricks, Some of them have stones, some have a couple little fences. We're going to make them consistent. They're going to be, some are going to be eradicated because of the root system that is actually lifting up the sidewalks. So it's going to be a nice, clean slate to start with. The soil is going to be mitigated. And I believe the bid package is going out tomorrow. In doing so, as you saw this morning in the email from Mr. Rossini, Jonathan Alderson has created a list, which I can share with you via email offline. So we're putting in some really cool structures, some good trees, and it's going to be a great process, and it's really going to freshen up the WBA area, for sure. Looking forward to it.
And the 46 trees, how many trees are remaining? If 46 are being removed, how many are remaining?
There's a lot of trees remaining along the corridor. Some areas we're not even reviewing. These are 46. The 46 trees are trees that are actually in pits that have some tribulations, such as concrete's heaving or curbs getting pushed out, or the tree has reached its useful life expectancy or has a damaging effect or defect.
Okay, because I think the main thing we were interested in was not clear cutting the WBA.
Yep.
That was the original proposal to
Yep.
remove all the trees.
Yep.
So is there some way that we can see a plan as to which trees are coming out, just so we can get an idea? Is it 50%? Is it 10%? Is it 80%?
So there is a great plan that was put together. I'll have to get permission from Mr. Rossini to see if I can pass that out. It has a lot of engineering stuff, has my report with the urban forest matrix on it, which shows you pictures of each tree that I inserted in the report, along with all the defects and issues. Carroll Engineering, who did a fantastic job, they backed it up with mapping and some other areas of interest, such as the infrastructure mitigation. So I'll find out if I can pass that along.
Okay. Any questions?
Yeah, just wondering, do they have to go through same process everybody else does?
So this is a little bit more entailed because it is a prevailing wage job. So they are you're talking about the process of
No,
removals?
Coming through the shade tree, yeah.
That's a great question, and I never asked it. I can ask Mr. Rossini and ask that question. But in terms of the project, I'm sure that the applicant's contractor will have to do all that process of the removals. I don't think there's any heritage trees, I don't believe.
Well, it's basically the township. It's
Correct.
not really WBA.
Now, we still have to follow. So when we take down a tree, we
Yeah.
replace it as well. So I'm sure, James, that the contractor will go through the process of the permit, the clearing permit, and all that good stuff, yes.
Laura?
There's a total of 60 tree pits, yes.
Did-
46 trees are being removed,
Out of 60.
correct.
There's your answer.
Yeah.
How
Is
many
that
are
true?
remaining?
There-
Oh, no.
No, I think
No,
they're
are you saying,
different
no,
numbers.
there's probably within the district, I would say about 130, 140 trees.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're not even getting into some of the larger oaks that are along the corridors.
Okay.
These are tree pits. There's a total of 60 tree pits. Out of those 60 tree pits, there's 46 trees that are being removed. There's 14 of them that are empty currently. They are going to get mitigated through replacement.
And remember, the overlay district goes all the way to the Wawa, all
Correct.
the way to the.
Absolutely.
I was just trying
Yeah.
to give some math to it.
I know, yeah, and it
That
sounds like,
That
Yep.
clarifies it, okay.
You're welcome.
And it would be really nice to have it all come through shade tree. So you guys have that.
I think it has. I mean, Norsini's brought it up, but
it hasn't. That's why we keep asking.
yeah.
That's
was
why
at
we
last
want to
meeting,
see a plan.
Yeah, we
as to-
discussed it at the last meeting, I believe, right? Oh,
The
you're talking
last
about
meeting,
yes, correct,
It was,
yes.
we're going to clear cut the township.
Yes.
That's where we left off at the last meeting. We're going to remove all the trees, healthy, damaged, otherwise. And so, and then
We did get some response from the BOC from our request to say, wait a minute, we're not going to clear cut the township.
Yep, and they were to come here and present a plan. So we still, we're getting more information as it trickles in. And we got to give some.
That's why I wanted to make sure I updated you tonight.
Yep, Okay, so, great. Sounds like we will expect to see the contractor with a drawing, the trees that are being removed, follow the shade tree committee process. What will be interesting, though, is how it works with replacement trees. You know what I mean? If they were to follow our formula, it will be a lot more replacement trees than one for one, and I don't know, we'll have to
They're
figure
all
out
pretty
how we
small,
do
aren't
that.
they? Oh,
Most of them are
the
pretty
trees?
small, yes, yep.
So they're probably under the 20.
No, they're still,
It's that
let me
mid-size.
ask Mr. Nursini that question, and I'll
Yeah.
make sure he follows up with an email on it.
Is it most of the trees like on North Wayne? North and south. Most of them
And
on
west.
North Wayne are beat up anyway, right?
And John, do you know, are there any new pits being dug or created?
It was discussed, and I think it's going to be, from what I'm told, it's going to be in a future pipeline.
Okay.
Yep. But we are maximizing every spot we have to make sure that there is a healthy new structure in its place.
Okay. The reason I ask that, folks, is because it's something that we talked about a little bit after the last meeting, is that if the WBA project just includes existing pits, we have areas that are bare in the downtown. We could use some of our funds potentially in the fall to not only plant trees, but to create pits and plant trees in those pits. So that's something we could think about doing.
I think we also have to remember that the WBA does not own any of this, of these pits. They don't own any of it. They just happen to be an organization that umbrellas that property that the township already owns. So there's some confusion there. So even if we went through the shade tree, formula compensatory trees and money, they'd be paying themselves.
Yeah, the township would.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's correct.
Yeah.
Or it'd be coming back into our fund, but it'd all be part of trying to keep the shade tree canopy. It's just a question of, if we make the residents and businesses follow it, do we as a township have to follow our own rules? That's really what we're looking at. That's the sanity check.
It's a good question.
And we could do it with our fall tree planting, potentially. So we just need to figure that out. Okay. Anything else on the WBA project? Okay, I think we're good there. Seth?
One quick thing.
Yeah.
Since it's so many, is there anything we can do with the old trees, wood chips, firewood? Just a thought. Wood carvings.
Great question. I can pose that to Steve. However, again, because the project is so large in terms of dollars, it's going to be a pen bid. So, I mean, we could get somebody from Kentucky doing this project, unfortunately. Yep. But we can definitely discuss that. Yep. As a recycling, maybe going back to Skunk Hollow for sure. Yep.
Okay, and that brings us to the end of our goal update. Okay, so switching back to the main agenda, that was a large number, 7. We have left old business, new business, hazardous trees, and trees being removed by the township. So under old business, there's the Philippone Beauconnor La Maison tract. I have no update on old business. I think that was basically the vine removal, and then it would be looking for grants to do that type of work, or I should back up. Maybe you guys can help me between A and B, the Philippone Beauconnor La Maison tract and the Warren Philippone Park. One of them was to get a quote to actually remove the vines, and then from there we could decide, is that where we want to allocate funds? And then would we be the ones allocating funds, or would it be the park committee? And how do we choose this park versus another park?
Well, I can speak
Yeah.
to, I can't speak to the exact where we are on the vines in those parks, but a grant has been, I'm sorry, a bond has been issued for those 2 parks, so they are currently closed. Beauconnor's closed first. Philippone will be where they're going to park construction vehicles. So there's going to be new surfacing, tennis courts, those kinds of things. So I don't know offhand if the vine removal is part of that bond. I don't think it is, but Tammy would be the person that we need to check with.
Okay, Claire, do you mind doing that?
Absolutely not.
Okay,
Yeah.
that would be great. Okay.
Would you need to check with the school board too, or isn't part of parks owned by the school?
Not on Philippone and Bow, I don't believe. Odoricio is, that, but not, so that's the one where the school board owns some of the places where there are vines, so. But I know for Bow Connor and Philippone, that's what's going on right now, but I'm not sure where we are with the vines, but let me ask and I'll get back to you.
Perfect. Okay, that's great. And then we go on to hazardous trees, item number 10. So we have 4 hazardous trees, 4 addresses with multiple hazardous trees being removed. John, you want to make any comments here?
I've actually just emailing Steve Rossini to get some of those questions, see if I can answer them tonight.
Okay.
Question?
For the hazardous trees, there's 4 properties that have multiple hazardous trees being removed. Any comments? Did you look at these trees?
Yep.
Yeah.
All trees were reviewed. There was nothing significant. Obviously, decline is a big issue. I think 2 of them were ash, I believe, on this one, or was that recently? Nothing spectacular.
Okay.
All the trees were degraded. There was no funny business, that's for sure.
Sounds good. And then the last item is trees being removed by the township. There are too many to count. But can we assume these are all hazardous trees being removed by the township?
I do not have the full answer to that. There were some trees in some parks that were hazardous. Sometimes there are sightline issues that trees are removed. Sometimes they count trees that have already failed during a storm. They count them as being removed, and I think we had a few of those. Yep.
Like they came down.
Yeah, they came down, they just note them.
Yep. Okay, and typically we look at this more so for information and more so with an eye towards the heritage trees. And I can see 2 of them, of the heritage trees on there are ash trees, most likely in decline, because if they weren't treated, they would be likely in decline. And then there's just one other that I spot is the 44-inch elm. Yeah, right, yeah, we're in the right of way. If, it must be the right of way if the township removed it versus a resident.
I believe that one was like 90% dead.
And it had to be an original. elm.
Correct.
It wasn't a new species.
That's correct.
And the township will not take down
Right.
a tree in front of somebody's property unless, normally what happens is we'll get a phone call, and they'll go out and they'll look at the tree, one, to make sure that it's in the right-of-way, and if it is in the right-of-way, they will mark it
correct.
for removal if it needs to be come down.
Okay. And
There was a lot of bad thunderstorms too the past month, so
I know.
there's a lot of removals going on.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I'll look forward to, Matt, when the survey's complete, which is amazing the progress you're making there, is to hand over that list, especially of the most severe hazardous trees, so we get them down before they take down wires. So I think, and whether it's a resident or us, the township taking them down, depending upon where they are. Okay. So folks, that brings us to the end of our agenda. Is there any comments before we close, John?
You know, I just emailed Mr. Norsini for your questions regarding sharing the plans with the Shade Tree Commission, which as soon as he gives me the green light, I will forward them over to you,
Perfect.
all the plans.
Okay.
Your second question was, does this project have to follow our ordinance?
Yeah,
And I will find out about that as well.
perfect. Oh, sorry, excuse me. Public participation, the Radnor Conservancy is here. Laura, would you like to say anything?
Yes, okay, so, a couple things. Mostly what I wanted to just give you a little update with, tree tenders. PHS has their tree tenders program come up this fall, and I'll tell Gretchen to advertise this. But there are, Delaware County has one, which is in September 18th, 25th, and October 2nd. These are 3-class series, and it's from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. And I don't have the actual location of it in Delaware County, but it's somewhere around here. And I also wanted to say I was talking to PHS, and they are going to try to get another Public Works training day, which they did this spring, and hopefully we can get more staff to go on a specific training day of how tree tenders. So that would be really exciting if that could happen. And lastly, the Conservancy is having their fall fundraiser
Yes.
at Chanticleer, and Howard Holden is our honoree, and our theme is the canopy. So we'd love for you guys to be able to share all the successes that everybody on this diocese has done, and it should be a nice event.
And Laura, can you remind us when the date is?
The Conservancy party is September 13th. That's a Friday night. It's an early start because it's at Chanticleer and they don't have lighting. I believe it's a 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock or 7:30. I'm not quite sure. You guys will all get invitations, so.
Yeah.
But just to give you a little reminder.
Yeah.
and the
No,
public
I've
a
attended
reminder.
previous years. It's been lovely.
Yes.
So very well done.
And that's really, I think, really about it. Oh, one last question.
Mhm.
When is the special financial budget BOC meeting?
I don't know. I haven't heard anything about that.
Because
Do you mean when we
that-
go
it-
to request funds?
Yeah, because I think they're having one specifically for trees sometime in August, if I remember the schedule.
Yeah, but we may not. This is how we find things out. So thank you.
I was trying to find it on the
Yeah.
website. There is a list of
Yeah.
what they're all there are multiple meetings through this, up to the budget date, which is,
Mhm.
I think, at the end of the summer. And I think the trees are coming up.
Okay.
So we need to look at that and look at, like, all those trees that got taken down,
Mhm.
removed by the township. That
Yeah.
kind of gives us, remember, how much it kind of technically costs for the township to remove and how much
Yeah.
to budget, and is it a shade tree budget, is it a public works budget?
Yeah, last year it was in the November, I think December timeframe. And we did an all-inclusive budget of trees, regardless of whether it came from Public Works or ourselves.
Yeah.
But it is a lot of work to figure out. We would just have to refresh what we had last year with how many have come
Yeah.
down this year. Hopefully, we've made a big difference in how many we plant this year. That's what should
That's
look.
a big deal.
That
You
should
have-
look a lot different than last
You
year.
have your awesome spreadsheet that
I know. I wasn't thinking of tackling that until like a little bit later. So if they have an August meeting, that will be good to know.
Well, it'll be good to find out,
Yeah.
and good to find out how they're going to talk about it.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah, no, that's good to know. Thanks, Laura.
It's really raining now.
Yeah, I think so. Anything else before we close? Okay, great. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Yep.